Ray, it's a nice day for a stroll along Route 114 in southern New Hampshire. Weather's good, and I see some construction projects going on behind us.
Yeah, sure. But where are we going?
Exactly.
No, I asked, where are we going?
And I said you're correct.
What?
No, I've never been to what? I've never even heard of it.
Where?
Right.
What?
There you go again. Do you know where we are?
I think I'm having deja vu.
I get that.
We've been here before.
Where?
Yes. And it feels like we've said this before.
We may have.
Okay. Why are we back?
Ray, we've returned to Weare, New Hampshire to witness the Pine Tree Riot. Hey, I'm Jeff Belanger.
And I'm Ray Auger. Welcome to episode 405 of the New England Legends podcast. We're on a mission to chronicle every legend in New England one story at a time. And we're glad you're riding along with us. We're always on the hunt for odd history, ghosts, monsters, UFOs, roadside oddities, and all the wicked strange things that make New England like no other place. So many of our story leads come from you, so please reach out to us anytime through our website.
We'll explore the Pine Tree Riot right after this word from our sponsor.
So, a Pine Tree Riot.
Right.
In Weare, New Hampshire?
This was the place, yeah.
So the pine trees themselves rioted?
No, the pine trees did what pine trees do. It was the people who rioted, and I can tell you, the riot was violent and is considered a significant stepping stone in the founding of a new nation.
Really? This isn't something I've heard of before.
No, me neither, and I don't think a lot of people have. But many consider it a precursor to the Boston Tea Party.
Wow, so we're talking Revolutionary days.
We are. So right now we're standing on the side of South Stark Highway, or Route 114, pretty close to the intersection with Knox Road in Weare, and our destination is right here.
Okay, well, I see an old round millstone standing on its side facing the road. On it, there's a plaque that says, Site of Pine Tree Tavern, where it took place April 14, 1772, the Pine Tree Riot, one of the first acts against the laws of England.
The tavern is long gone, as is Quimby's Inn, which was also right here. And now there's just a commercial building that looks sort of like a house, and this marker is in the front yard just off the side of Route 114. To find out how it got here, let's head back to 1772.
It's January of 1772 here in the young town of Weare. King George III is on the throne in England, and some of the colonists here in America are getting restless. The first cabin was built in town back in 1750, and since then, Weare has grown.
Some residents have cleared the land for farms, others are working timber. Americas are growing, and new houses and barns need wood. There's a sawmill in town turning trees into usable lumber.
But for the King of England, New Hampshire's forests contain something more valuable than gold, namely large white pine trees that are perfect for ship masts for the Royal Navy.
England has already pretty much deforested itself over a century ago, so if their Navy's going to continue building ships and conquering far-off lands, they need the right materials. Back in 1690, King William prohibited cutting down white pine trees over 2 feet in diameter because those had to be reserved for the Royal Navy. In 1722, King George I lowered the diameter to 1 foot, making even more trees off-limit. He also established that you needed a license to cut any sort of tree for logging or otherwise, and he placed fines or even jail for those who broke the law. So what did the good residents of New Hampshire do in response to these laws regarding their white pine trees?
What's that?
They ignored the law.
Well, that makes sense. I mean, who would know?
You're mostly correct. Not too many government officials have the time to come inspect every tree in a sawmill. But then something changed 5 years ago.
What changed?
So in 1767, John Wentworth was named governor of New Hampshire and appointed surveyor of the King's Woods. Wentworth saw the value in the trees and what they meant to the Royal Navy, so he deputized people throughout the land. He figured it was high time to enforce the existing law. He even had a servant drive him around in his coach to personally inspect some of the mill yards for white pines.
I can't imagine this is sitting well with the folks in New Hampshire.
No, it's not. Now, before any settlers can clear land for their homes or farms, the deputies come around and mark white pine trees that must be reserved for the king, and then ask the settlers for a license and a fee to cut down the rest of the trees on their land.
You're kidding.
No, and neither is Governor Wentworth.
So if I settle some land and want to clear my fields of trees to build my home and barn, and I have to clear fields for livestock and growing food, I may not be able to if the tree is marked?
That's correct.
Oh, That just burns my pantaloons.
And you're not the only one. Illegally cut white pine can be seized, and the owner fined heavily, even jailed.
I'm guessing that any moderately experienced deputy can look at a wood plank and make an educated guess as to whether it was taken illegally.
They can. The thought is there should be no white pine out there in the market for buildings or otherwise, unless the logs are on their way to the shipyard for one of His Majesty's boats.
Recently, a deputy surveyor of the King's Woods traveled to Oil Mill in the southern part of Weare and marked 270 trees he deemed worthy of a ship's mast.
It's now April, and a deputy surveyor has returned to Weare to inspect the King's Woods. He clearly sees many of his marked trees have been chopped down. A search of Weare and some of the nearby towns give the deputy his answer. The trees were cut down despite the law and despite them being marked. So the deputy fined all the loggers in question. The men from the surrounding towns hung their heads and begrudgingly paid their fines. But not the men from Weare. They refused and are labeled by the deputy as, quote, notorious offenders.
For Governor Wentworth, this will not stand. County Sheriff Benjamin Whiting, Esquire, of nearby Hollis, and his deputy John Quigley, Esquire, of Francistown, are charged with delivering warrants and making arrests in Weare. It's April 13th when Whiting and Quigley ride into town.
The sheriff's main target is Ebenezer Mudgett. He was found to possess the most white pine timber. After hearing the threats and accusations, Mudgett agrees to come into town the following day and pay his hefty fine.
The sheriff is satisfied with the news, plus it's getting late. He and his deputy ride for Quimby's Inn near the center of town to stay for the night.
Ebenezer Mudgett is furious about the fine, but he also feels helpless.
Meanwhile, word of this injustice is ripping through town like a sharp axe through a soft tree. It would seem the people of Weare have had enough of this stupid law. This is their land. If the king wants a few specific trees, that's fine, but he can't hold all of them and then charge people a fee to take down other trees.
It's just before dawn. There's over 20 men gathered here outside of Quimby's Inn. They've painted their faces black as a disguise. They're armed with switches of sticks. Okay, the group is about to storm into Sheriff Whiting's room in the inn.
The sheriff just grabbed for his pistol. Okay, a few of the men grabbed his hands and pinned him against the wall.
I have no doubt a few of us would have been shot.
The mob have pulled the guns out of the room.
Okay, now a bunch of them have pinned the sheriff face down on the floor. They've ripped the shirt from his back. Oh, the men are taking turns whipping the sheriff with their sticks.
These men are enraged. They're taking out every fine they've ever paid on the sheriff's back. For many agonizing minutes, the men take turns whipping the sheriff's back.
The deputy in the room above doesn't fare much better. The mob are also beating the deputy with poles and switches.
Outside, the mob doesn't even spare the sheriff and deputy's horses. They crop the horses' ears and shear their manes and tails. The angry mob drag the bleeding sheriff and deputy outside and shove them towards their horses.
The sheriff and deputy ride off toward Goffstown, wishing they had never heard of white pine trees.
The road they're trotting down right now is called Mast Road, named for the very logs they came here to protect.
Governor Wentworth can't let this treasonous act go unpunished, but he also recognizes the precarious spot both he and the crown are in. You can only push your subjects so far. Once they resort to violence, you have to be careful. Is this a fluke, or merely the first blood drawn in something that could grow? In the end, 8 men from Weare are brought before His Majesty's Superior Court and charged with being rioters and disturbers of the peace, and with making an assault upon the body of Benjamin Whiting, Esquire Sheriff, and that they beat, wounded, and evilly entreated him and other injuries did so that his life was despaired of. They were also charged with going against the peace of the Lord the King, his crown, and dignity. They're made to pay a light fine in the hopes that this would be the end of it. See, the judges understood how unjust this law is, so they made a statement with their mere 20-shilling fine.
Meanwhile, after the news of the Pine Tree Riot spread, deputies in charge of marking white pine trees couldn't help but look over their shoulders each time they ride through the forests of New Hampshire. And that brings us back to today.
Just a reminder that the Pine Tree Riot took place April 14th, 1772. In 1773, England began enforcing a duty on tea, which led to the Boston Tea Party December 16th, 1773. Each was a stepping stone toward a revolution.
Why do you think we've all heard of the Boston Tea Party, but so few of us have heard about the Pine Tree Riot? Both seem like a significant moment in the American Revolution.
So in 1888, William Little published a book called History of Weare, New Hampshire, 1735 to 1888. In his book, he addresses that very question. He said, and I quote, "The only reason why the Boston Tea Party is better known than our Pine Tree Riot is because they have better historians."
I'm sure there's a lot of truth to that.
I'm sure there is. So the Pine Tree Riot wasn't the only rebellion in New Hampshire either. There was the rebellion in Portsmouth in 1765 because of the Stamp Act, and an uprising in 1764 due to the Sugar Act. The American Revolution was never about one single issue, but a growing list of problems. In the end, the King of England learned the hard way. There's only so far you can push your subjects before they resort to violence. And then war. Sometimes something as simple as a tree can grow into a revolution.
And that takes us to After the Legend, where we take a deeper dive into this week's story and sometimes veer off course.
After the Legend's brought to you by our Patreon patrons. They support us in everything we do. We need them now more than ever. It takes a lot of money and time to bring you 2 podcasts each week, and our patrons make that happen. They kick in just $3 per month. For that, they get early ad-free access to new episodes, plus bonus episodes and content that no one else gets to hear. They also have access to our entire archive of shows. To sign up, just click on the link in our episode description or go to patreon.com/New England Legends. And to see some pictures of the Pine Tree Riot Monument, you'll also find that link in our episode description or go to our website and click on episode 405.
Do you think there was a meeting at some point, like, how do we figure out when the Revolutionary War really started? Well, Boston, a little sexier than Weare, New Hampshire. Let's go with the Boston Massacre. I mean, the Tea Party.
The Boston. Funny you mentioned the Boston Massacre because we've covered that in the past. Where really, and that was Paul Revere. He owned a print works, and he had this lithograph made of the massacre, and it showed all the British soldiers lined up, gunning down people cowering for their lives. Right. Which, if you read any of the eyewitness accounts, isn't what happened
It's propaganda.
It's propaganda.
Yeah.
It was propaganda, absolutely. Boston's a much bigger town than Weare. Boston's a city and a major port, and Weare is a small town.
Right.
But
who cares about small towns?
well, but that happens today, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, when selling the revolution to Americans, you were like, hey, look at what they did in Boston. Look at the massacre. Look at the Tea Party, the uprising, right? When a crowded city rises up, then there's suddenly trouble.
Right. These are city folk, well-educated folk, not the hicks out in Weare.
Well, here, think of this too. Sheer numbers, right? If a city decides to riot, you're in trouble. A small town, I think
That's a Friday night.
but that's a lot braver, isn't it?
Well, yeah, yes.
20
in reality, sure.
20 locals against, I mean, granted, 2 men in this case, the sheriff and his deputy, but if they sent the redcoats in,
Yeah.
they don't stand a chance.
Oh, they could have wiped out the town.
Easily, right? So a city, sure, there's strength in mobs, big mobs, but when you're in a small town, like, ooh, that took guts.
Right.
Think about it, and they made their point, right? And this is the thing with any sort of autocracy in a kingdom, where if you push your subjects too far, once they resort to violence, you're in trouble because you can't always walk that back,
Right.
So once it gets bloody. Ugh.
No turning back.
Yeah,
exactly.
You can try to double down on force, but that might just push the issue even further.
Right.
Like now we're fighting for our lives. Like this really is a war. It's on, and that's what happened. That's how revolutions are born. And so yes, we've covered other stories where there were other stories throughout New England. We did one in Rhode Island too, where someone attacked a ship.
Oh yeah,
right. So there's a million little things, not a million, but there's a bunch.
Sure.
There's a bunch of little acts of rebellion, and I think if you're from that town, you're like, darn right, that was us. Like we were the ones that started the revolution.
It is interesting what they put in the history books, though,
Yeah.
that we grew up with. Now that we have computers and
Right.
more historians looking back and doing research, we know better. But
Yeah.
back then, there was one textbook for history. Pretty much.
And they didn't read, this man's history of the town, which
Well,
probably,
they didn't give us that in school.
I mean, how many copies did that sell?
Weare probably didn't even know about it.
Yeah.
The kids of Weare didn't learn about that.
I mean, it's probably like a couple of original copies are still kicking around town. One in the library,
Yeah.
maybe one in the town hall, and
In the fiction section.
and it's someone's attic, right? And so there's these treasure troves. But what's happening now is pretty cool. So they're being digitized. Archive.org, and we've sang their praises forever, has so many old books that have been digitized. You used to have to travel far to faraway lands, see if the library will let you flip through some giant book, right? Like super thick book, looking for nuggets of what you're interested in. And now you can search. You can search digitally.
What's the machine that the
Microfiche.
Microfiche, right? So when they were going through books and that microfiche came out, you think they were like, "What's next? This is crazy technology."
Yeah, I know. And now we have access to all these little things, and we can put together a more complete picture. At the time, they were trying to sell the revolution to a people, and because you have to say like, "Hey, we need everybody on board with this, or at least most of us." Or it's never going to work. But the reality is, like, I think the Pine Tree Riot is so. Imagine you buy some land, and this is your land now. You're going to settle it. You're going to farm.
You're excited, right?
Yeah.
Oh, we can open up this whole area here. We're going to put an in-ground pool right there.
Yeah, the barbecue pit over here. Right? Yeah, the whatever. Yeah, but no, those trees, they have to stay.
Crazy.
But how am I going to grow food if these big trees are casting shade and stuff like that?
Oh, well, you can pay us.
Well, right, but even still, like those. Hey, if we want to turn that into a ship's mast, you got to leave it right where it is. Like that could be a ship's mast in the Royal Navy. So leave it, and we'll come get it if we need it. But we need to know. We need to know it's right there.
Yeah.
I mean, there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. How many ships can you build?
Right.
Right. I know the Royal Navy was big. The sun never set on the British Empire for a while. Right. So yeah. But I mean. I love how this story, it's so easy to imagine how infuriated I would be if I lived in a town and I was told, wait, it's my land and I can cut down certain trees. I can't cut others just in case you might come and want these things. And then I got to pay to cut down trees on my land.
Right.
Yeah. That's,
Do you think it's dangerous to know more about history now that we have the technology, or is it better to just go with what we learned when we were younger? Is it like you're opening up a whole other can of worms?
Yeah.
If it's like, that happened, but guess what? Something else happened that was more important. Is that just messing with people's minds, or should we just go with what we know?
I don't know. I'm always for like learning more about the complete picture.
Obviously, yes.
Yeah, no,
in your line of work.
Yeah, but I think that's the more you know, the more you have a sense, right? We've told a few stories along the way of British loyalists. There were people during the American Revolution that said, "I'm a proud British citizen."
Never thought of that because again, they never taught us that.
Well,
we were all against England back then. It was us against them.
Well, after it was over, I'm sure some of those Tories were like, Yeah.
I was with you guys all along.
All along. I just, I was incognito on that one. So yeah, there were probably a few that left and said, I'm going back to England because I want to be a British citizen. And so, I'm sure there was every part of that. That's how these things go. Dangerous and bloody and deadly. And had it gone the other way, then you would have been the New England Traitors, not the Patriots.
Right.
And that football team no one wants to root for them.
We might be eating tea and crumpets.
Tea and crumpets instead of coffee and donuts. But that's how it goes sometimes, and sometimes it takes a riot to change things.
You know what to do. Before you leave us today, please make sure that you subscribe to our podcast because it's free. Post a review because that helps others find us, and tell a friend or two about the show. You are where we get most of our story leads and how more people find out about our community. The more people who listen, the more leads that come in. We can't do this without you.
We'd like to thank our sponsors. Thank you so much to our Patreon patrons, and our theme music is, of course, by John Judd.
Until next time, remember,
the bazaar is closer than you think.